The barn door crashed open, and Flint McAllen's world stopped. 5 women knelt in the blood-stained, straw-bruised faces, bare feet, hands bound with rope, burns still raw. Apache. The eldest one lifted her chin, met his eyes dead on. No tears, no begging. Just that look, the one that said she'd already survived her worst nightmare, and whatever he planned to do couldn't touch her anymore. Flint's finger found the shotgun trigger. One squeeze and this problem disappeared. Instead, his hand started shaking. Hit subscribe right now and stick with me till the end. I promise this story goes places you won't expect. Drop a comment with your city so I can see how far we're reaching across this country. Now let's go back to that freezing October morning in 1883. Bete. The lantern light cut through the barn's darkness and landed on them like an accusation. 5 women. Kneeling. Waiting. Flint McAllen stood frozen in the doorway, his breath making frost clouds in the pre-dawn cold. The shotgun in his right hand suddenly weighed 50 pounds. His left hand gripped the lantern so hard the handle bit into his palm. The woman in front spoke first. Her voice came out steady, which was the most terrifying thing about it. Shoot us or don't. But decide now, because if you're going to do it, I'd rather not spend my last minutes watching you make up your mind. Flint's mouth went dry. What? Yes or no, old man? I'm not going to. Then lower the gun. He did. Didn't remember deciding to, but the barrel dropped toward the straw-covered floor anyway. The woman's shoulders released maybe half an inch of tension. Behind her, the other 4 stayed motionless heads, bowed like they were praying or preparing to die. Maybe both. How long you been here? Flint managed. 3 hours. Maybe 4. The woman's eyes never left his face. We didn't touch anything, didn't steal, just needed somewhere to... You're bleeding. Yes. All of you. Yes. Flint set the lantern on a hay bale. The light spread wider and he could see them clearly now. The youngest couldn't have been more than 15, 16 maybe? Her feet left dark prints on the straw. The others weren't much better, bruises yellowing on their arms, cuts on their hands. Dirt ground so deep into their skin it looked permanent. Anyone chasing you? He asked. The woman's jaw tightened. Not yet. That's a hell of an answer. It's the truth. How soon's not yet? Day. Maybe 2. They'll find the trail eventually. They always do. Flint rubbed his face with his free hand. Every instinct screamed to send them away. This kind of trouble would get him killed or worse. But Christ, he couldn't stop looking at those feet, at the rope burns around their wrists, at the way the youngest one was shaking, trying so hard not to let it show. You got names? He finally asked. Ayanna. She gestured without looking back. Mika. Sunny. Tula. Ren. Which one's Ren? The girl. The youngest. Flint studied her small, dark-haired, huge eyes that looked like they'd seen things that would give grown men nightmares. She wouldn't meet his gaze, just stared at the floor like it might open up and swallow her. She hurt bad? Flint asked. We're all hurt bad, Ayanna said. Question is whether you're going to add to it. I'm not. Then what are you going to do? Good question. Flint looked at the 5 of them kneeling in his barn in the middle of the night, running from something bad enough to risk everything on a stranger's mercy. He thought about Sarah, about what she would have done. Sarah, who'd fed every drifter who came through, who'd never turned away anyone in need, who'd believed right up until the fever took her that people were fundamentally decent if you gave them the chance to prove it. Sarah had been wrong about a lot of things, but maybe not this. Can you walk? He asked. Ayanna blinked. What? Walk. Can you do it, or are the feet too torn up? We can walk. Then follow me. He didn't wait for a response, just grabbed the lantern and headed out. Behind him, he heard movement, cautious, uncertain. Good. They should be uncertain. He was uncertain, and this was his damn property. The house was small, 4 rooms total, Barely enough for one person, let alone 6. But the main room had a fireplace, and Sarah's old quilts were still in the chest, and there was bread from yesterday that hadn't gone stale yet. Flint pushed open the door and stepped aside. "In," he said. Nobody moved. "I said in. Cold's getting worse, and I'm not wasting heat on an open door." Ayanna was the first through, moving like a wolf entering a trap, ready to bolt at the first sign of danger. The others followed in a tight group. They clustered near the doorway, not touching anything, barely breathing. Flint set the lantern on the table and got to work. He stirred up the fire, pulled out the quilts, cut thick slices of bread, and set out the butter. There was still some deer jerky from last week's hunt, some dried apples, a jug of water that wasn't too stale. He laid it all on the table and stepped back. "Eat." Ayanna stared at the food like it might bite her. "Why?" "Because you're starving, and I'm tired of watching people waste away on my land." "What do you want in return?" "Nothing." "Nobody gives something for nothing." "I just did." "What's the catch?" Flint met her eyes, hard, suspicious. Desperate eyes that had learned not to trust kindness, because kindness always had teeth. "The catch is, you eat the food you get warm, and come morning, you tell me whether those men chasing you are the type to burn down a barn or just shoot whoever gets in their way. That's it. That's the whole deal." "And if we can't pay you back?" "Did I ask for payment?" "No, but..." "Then eat the damn bread before I change my mind." Ayanna studied him for another long moment. Then she moved to the table, picked up a slice of bread, and took a bite. The others waited until she nodded, then fell on the food like wolves. Not frantically, they had too much control for that, but steadily, methodically, like they were afraid it might disappear. Flint watched the meat and felt something twist in his chest. When was the last time anyone had sat at this table? When was the last time these walls had heard voices besides his own? 3 years. 3 years since Sarah had died. 3 years of silence. "I'll be in the barn," he said. "You need anything, that's where I'll be." "You're leaving us alone in your house?" Ayanna asked. "You already broke into my barn. Figure you've proven you're not going to steal the silver." "We don't want—" "I know. That's why I'm leaving." He was halfway out the door when Wren spoke for the first time. Her voice came out small, uncertain, nothing like Ayanna's steel. "Thank you." Flint paused, didn't turn around. "Don't thank me yet. Morning's still a long way off." He didn't sleep. Couldn't. Flint lay on a pile of hay in the barn, his shotgun across his chest, listening to the night sounds. Wind through the cracks in the walls. Horses shifting in their stalls. His own heartbeat hammering in his ears. What the hell had he done? 5 Apache women in his house. 5 runaways he knew that's what they were, had to be. Nobody ended up that beaten, that desperate, that terrified without running from something. And whatever they were running from would come looking. Would come here. Would bring guns and anger and the kind of violence that left bodies in the dirt. Flint closed his eyes and saw Sarah's face. Heard her voice clear as day. "You did the right thing." "The right thing's going to get me killed," he muttered into the darkness. "Then at least you'll die human." He sat up, rubbed his face. Talking to dead wives. Perfect. That's what his life had become. The eastern sky was just starting to gray when he heard it, the soft creak of the house door opening. Flint grabbed the shotgun and moved to the barn entrance, staying in shadow. Ayanna stepped out onto the porch, wrapped in one of Sarah's quilts. She stood there for a long moment, staring at the dawn. Then she walked toward the barn, steady and purposeful. "I know you're watching," she called softly. "Come out." Flint emerged. "Thought you'd be sleeping." "Can't. Haven't been able to sleep more than an hour at a time in 3 months." "That how long you've been running?" 4 months. 3 since they started chasing." She pulled the quilt tighter. "The others are asleep, finally. I wanted to talk to you before they woke up." About why you're doing this." I told you. You told me words. I want the truth. Ayanna moved closer, close enough that he could see the exhaustion carved into her face. Men don't help Apache women. Not anymore. Not after everything that's happened. So either you're the one decent white man left in the territory, or you want something. Which is it? Flint considered lying. Considered a dozen different answers that would make him sound better, stronger, more certain. Instead, he told the truth. 3 years ago, my wife died. Fever took her in 4 days, and there wasn't a damn thing I could do about it. Since then, I've been running this place alone, slowly watching it fall apart. Slowly watching myself fall apart. He gestured at the ranch spreading out around them. This land used to mean something, used to be alive. Now it's just waiting. For me to die or leave or burn it down myself, I don't know which. And we're your chance at redemption. You're 5 people who needed help and I happened to be there, that's all. That's not all. No, Flint admitted. It's not. Truth is, I haven't felt like a human being in 3 years. Haven't felt anything except empty. And then I opened that barn door and saw you kneeling there, and for the first time since Sarah died, I felt something. Anger, fear, pity, shame, something, anything. So maybe I'm the one who needs help, and you just happen to be there. Ayanna was quiet for a long time. The sun crept higher, painting the clouds orange and red. The men chasing us, she finally said. There are 3 of them, maybe 4 if they picked up the tracker they were talking about. They're not soldiers, not lawmen, just men who think they own things that can't be owned. They buy you. They tried, from the Indian agent at San Carlos. He wasn't supposed to do that, but he did anyway because there's no law out here except whatever men with guns decide it is. Her voice stayed flat, emotionless. We ran before the sale went through, but they'd already paid, and they want their property back. You're not property. Try telling them that. I will if they show up. They'll kill you, probably, but I'll take at least one of them with me. Ayanna turned to look at him fully. You mean that? Yes. Why? Because some things are worth dying for, and keeping slavers off my land is one of them. The words hung between them. Ayanna's expression shifted surprise confusion, something that might have been hope, if hope hadn't been beaten out of her months ago. We should leave, she said. Before they get here. Before you get hurt. Where would you go? I don't know, somewhere, anywhere. In those clothes, with those feet in October. Flint shook his head. You'd be dead in a week. Better than getting you killed. That's my choice to make, not yours. But, listen to me. Flint stepped closer. I don't know you. You don't know me. But for whatever reason, fate chanced Sarah's ghost pushing me around, you ended up in my barn. And maybe that means something. Maybe it means I finally have a reason to fight for this place again. Or maybe it just means you get a few days of safety before the world comes crashing back in. Either way, I'm not kicking you out. Ayanna's eyes glistened, but no tears fell. You're going to regret this. Probably. But I've been regretting everything for 3 years anyway. Might as well regret something decent. They stayed. Flint expected them to keep to the house to hide away like frightened animals. Instead, they worked. He came out at dawn the first full day to find Mika hauling water from the well. Not tentatively, not carefully, she worked like someone who knew her way around hard labor and wasn't afraid of it. When Flint tried to take the bucket, she pulled it away. I can do it, she said. Her English was rougher than Ayanna's, harder to understand. Need to do it. It's heavy. So am I. She walked past him toward the water trough, shoulders square, refusing to show the pain that had to be screaming through her injured feet. Flint watched her go and felt something shift in his understanding of these women. They weren't victims waiting to be saved. They were survivors waiting to be given the chance to prove it. By noon, Sonny and Tula had repaired the fence section that had been sagging for 6 months. Flint watched them work with materials he'd given up on watching them measure and cut and bind, with an efficiency that spoke of practice of skill of lives lived before the running had started. "Where'd you learn that?" he asked Tula. She glanced at him, then away. When she spoke, her voice was soft, almost musical. "My husband was a builder. Before. He taught me." "Where is he now?" "Dead. Soldiers killed him 2 years ago during a raid." She went back to tying off the wire. "I watched." Flint didn't know what to say to that. Didn't know if there were words that could possibly matter. So he just nodded and left her to her work. Ayanna found him on the porch at sunset. "They need this. The work. The purpose. We've been running so long we forgot what it felt like to build instead of flee. To create instead of hide. They're good at it. They're good at everything. You just never gave them the chance to show you." Ayanna sat beside him on the steps. Mika used to run her family's farm, 40 acres, 3 crops, 24 cattle. Sonny was a scout for the cavalry before they decided scouts weren't needed anymore. Tula's husband built half the homes in their village before the soldiers came. And Ren... She stopped. "Ren, what?" Flint asked. Ren was a child. Just a child. And then she wasn't anymore. They sat in silence as the sun dropped below the ridge. In the barn, Flint heard quiet voices, the women talking among themselves in their own language. It sounded like music. Like something that had been missing from this land for too long. "How much time do we have?" Flint asked. "Before they come, I don't know. Days. Maybe a week if we're lucky." "What's the play when they show up?" "There is no play, there's just what happens." "Not good enough." Ayanna looked at him sharply. "What?" "I said not good enough. If they're coming, we prepare. We fortify. We make a plan. You can't fight them. Watch me." Flint. "They come here, they're going to find 6 people ready to defend this land. Not 5 victims and 1 old rancher. 6 equals. You understand me?" Something flickered across Ayanna's face. Surprise, hope, fear, all tangled together. "You barely know us." "I know enough. You don't owe us this." "I don't owe anyone anything. I'm doing it because it's right, and because for the first time in 3 years, this place feels like it might be worth saving." He stood, brushed dust off his pants. "Now let's go figure out how to turn a ranch into a fortress." 3 days. That's how long they had before everything changed. 3 days of building barricades from hay bales. 3 days of cleaning rifles and checking ammunition. 3 days of Flint teaching them his property where the sight lines were good, where the blind spots existed, where someone could hide if everything went to hell. Mika took to the rifle like she'd been born with one. Her hands were steady, her aim true, her face carved from granite when she sighted down the barrel. "You've shot before," Flint said. "Yes." "At what?" "Men who needed shooting." She didn't elaborate. Didn't need to. Sonny was quieter, but no less capable. She moved through the ranch like smoke, finding weaknesses, suggesting improvements, her tactical mind still sharp, despite everything she'd endured. "If they come at dawn, they'll approach from the east," she told Flint on the second day. "Sun at their backs hard for us to see them. So we position someone on the west side of the barn, elevated, good sight line." "I'll take that position." "You sure?" Sonny's smile was thin and cold. "I'm sure." Tula turned out to be a genius with traps. She scattered nails along the approach routes, rigged warning systems with tin cans and wire, created obstacles that wouldn't stop determined men, but would slow them down long enough to matter. "You're good at this," Flint observed. "Had to be. The village I lived in, we had to defend ourselves every few months. The soldiers, the raiders, the men who thought Indian land was theirs for the taking." Her hands never stopped moving. "I learned or I died. So I learned." And Ren. Ren was the one who surprised him most. On the third day, Flint found her in the barn holding his pistol. Just holding it, feeling the weight, her small hands wrapped around the grip like she was trying to memorize its shape. "You know how to use that?" he asked. She looked up startled, but didn't put it down. "Ayana's been teaching me." "You want to learn?" "I want to stop being afraid." Flint sat down beside her. "Knowing how to shoot won't do that." "Then what will?" "Nothing. The fear doesn't go away. You just learn to move through it instead of letting it move you." Ren considered this. Then she held out the pistol. "Show me anyway." So he did. Showed her how to check if it was loaded, how to aim, how to breathe and squeeze instead of pulling the trigger. She listened with an intensity that was almost frightening, absorbing every word like her life depended on it, which it probably did. "Why are you helping us?" she asked suddenly. "Because you need help." "But you don't know us. We could be lying. We could be dangerous." "Are you?" "No, but you didn't know that when you found us." Flint thought about that. "You're right. I didn't. But sometimes you have to make a choice based on what you see in someone's eyes instead of what you know about their past. And when I looked at you kneeling in that barn, I saw people who'd been hurt but not broken. That was enough." Ren was quiet for a moment. Then, "I remember you." Flint's hand froze. "What?" "From before, years ago. You were in Cold Mesa. We were being moved through me, Ayana, a dozen others. In chains. In a wagon. You were there." The memory hit him like a fist. 6 years ago, maybe 7. He'd been in town for supplies and had seen them Apache prisoners being transported to a reservation. Dirty, hungry, treated like cargo. He'd tossed a loaf of bread into the wagon without thinking, without expecting anything, except maybe easing his own guilt about the whole ugly business. "That was you," he said. "I was 10. I'd been crying for 3 days. And then you gave us bread and you looked sad. Not disgusted, not indifferent. Sad. Like our suffering hurt you." Ren's eyes found his. "Ayana said if we ever needed help, we should find the sad-eyed man who gave bread. So when we ran, we came here. We remembered this place. We remembered you." Flint couldn't speak, couldn't move. 6 years. A single loaf of bread. A moment of kindness he'd forgotten by the time he'd ridden home. And these women had carried it with them through hell, had navigated by it like a compass pointing toward hope. "I didn't do anything," he managed. "You did everything." Ren said simply, "You looked at us like we were people." They came on the 4th morning. Flint woke to the sound of horses, 3 of them moving fast coming from the east just like Sonny had predicted. He grabbed his rifle and was out the door in seconds. The women were already moving. Mika to the barn with her rifle. Sonny up onto the barn roof, barely visible against the gray dawn sky. Tula crouched behind the hay bales near the main approach. Ayana by the house, calm and steady, rifle in hand, like she'd been born with it. And Ren. Ren stood in the middle of it all, holding Flint's pistol, her face pale but determined. "Get to cover," Flint told her. "No." "Ren." "I said no. I'm done hiding." There wasn't time to argue. The riders crested the ridge and pulled up 50 yards out. 3 men, rough-looking, hard-eyed, armed with rifles, and the kind of confidence that came from never being told no. The one in front called out, "We're looking for property that wandered off. 5 Apache women. We tracked them here." Flint stepped forward, rifle loose in his hands but ready. "No property here, just people. Don't play games, old man. They belong to us. We paid good money." "Paid who?" "The Indian agent at San Carlos. $200 for the lot." The rider leaned forward in his saddle. "Now hand them over, and nobody has to get hurt." "Can't hand over what doesn't belong to you." "We got papers. I don't care if you got a letter from God himself. Those women are under my protection, and they're not going anywhere." The rider's face darkened. "You really want to die for a bunch of Indians? You really want to die trying to take them?" The standoff stretched. Flint could feel the tension like electricity in the air. One wrong move, one nervous finger, and this whole thing would explode into violence. Then Ayanna stepped up beside him. "You claim you bought us," she said, her voice carrying clear and cold across the space. "But the sale never went through. The agent was arrested 3 days after you paid him. Federal marshals took him to Tucson for trial, which means your money is gone and your claim is worthless." The rider's face went red. "You're lying." "Am I ride to San Carlos and check? We'll wait." "You think I'm stupid enough to leave and let you run again?" "I think you're stupid enough to die over something that was never yours in the first place." Mika's voice came from the barn. "I've got the one on the left." Sonny from the roof. "Middle's mine." Tula from behind the hay bales. "I'll take the right if it comes to it." The riders shifted nervously in their saddles, suddenly aware that they weren't facing one old man and 5 helpless women. They were facing 6 armed people who'd already decided they were done running. "Last chance," Flint said. "Turn around and ride away. Tell yourselves whatever story makes you feel better. But leave this land and don't come back." The front rider's hand moved toward his rifle. Wren raised the pistol. Her hand didn't shake. Her voice came out steady and sure. "I've got him." For a long moment, nobody breathed. Then the rider slowly moved his hand away from his weapon. His face was ugly with rage and humiliation, but underneath that, Flint saw something else. Fear. "This isn't over," the rider said. Ayanna's laugh was sharp and bitter. "Yes, it is. You just don't know it yet." The 3 men sat there for another few seconds weighing their options. Then the front rider spat in the dirt, pulled his horse around, and rode away. The other 2 followed. They didn't look back. Flint watched until they disappeared over the ridge. Then he let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. "They'll come back," Mika said from the barn. "No," Sonny said, climbing down from the roof. "They won't. They're cowards. Cowards only fight when they think they'll win. We proved they wouldn't." "Sonny's right," Ayanna said. She lowered her rifle and Flint saw her hands were shaking. Not from fear, from the release of adrenaline, from the weight of standing her ground and having it actually work. "They wanted easy prey. We showed them we weren't." Wren walked up to Flint and handed him back the pistol. "Thank you." "For what?" "For teaching me to stand." She smiled, actually smiled, and it transformed her face. "And for the bread. 6 years ago. I never forgot." Flint felt something crack open in his chest. Something that had been locked tight since Sarah died. "Neither did I," he said quietly. "Neither did I." The days after the standoff felt different. Lighter somehow. The fear that had hung over the ranch like smoke finally lifted. The women moved with more ease, more confidence. Laughter came easier. The work continued, but it felt less like survival and more like building something real. Mika organized the tools, cataloging what they had and what they needed. Sonny scouted the property boundaries, mapping out improvements and defenses. Tula started a garden behind the barn, herbs and vegetables, small green things that pushed up through the dirt like promises. And Wren began to speak more, her voice growing stronger every day. On the 7th night, Ayanna found Flint on the porch again. Their spot now. She sat beside him, 2 cups of terrible coffee in her hands, and they watched the sun set in comfortable silence. "I have a question," she finally said. "Shoot." "Why didn't you ask us to leave after they were gone?" "The danger's past. You're not obligated to keep us anymore." Flint thought about it. "You planning to leave?" "That depends on your answer." "Then here it is." He set down his coffee cup. "For 3 years I've been dying on this land. Not literally, but close enough. Every day was just, Waiting. For what I didn't know. Death, maybe. Or just for enough time to pass that I could finally give up without feeling guilty about it. And now I wake up and there's work to do. Real work. Not just maintenance on a dying dream, but actual building. Creating. There's voices in the morning and laughter at meals, and the sound of hammering and sawing and life happening. He turned to look at her. You asked me why I didn't send you away. Truth is, I'm terrified you'll leave on your own. Ayanna was quiet for a long time. When she spoke, her voice was thick. We've been running for so long. From reservations, from soldiers, from men who thought they could own us. We forgot what it felt like to have a home. A real one. Not just a place to sleep, but somewhere that was ours. This could be that. Could it really? Or are you just being kind? I'm not that kind. Flint met her eyes. I'm being selfish. I need this as much as you do. Maybe more. So if you're asking whether you can stay, the answer is yes. For as long as you want. Forever, if that's what you choose. And if we stay and build this with you, then we do it as equals, partners, not guests, not refugees, not labor. Partners who own this land together and make decisions together and share in whatever comes next. Ayanna's eyes glistened. You'd do that? Give us part of your land. It's not my land anymore. It hasn't been since the moment I opened that barn door. It's ours now. All of us. A tear slipped down Ayanna's cheek. Just one, but it was enough. She reached out and took his hand, rough, scarred, strong. Then we stay, she said. We stay and we build, and we make this place something worth protecting. Together. Together. They sat like that as the stars came out, as the night settled over Cold Mesa, with a gentleness it hadn't known in years. In the barn, voices rose in song, Tula's melody, Mika's harmony, Sonny's low counterpoint, and somewhere in that sound, Flint heard Wren laughing. Actually, laughing. For the first time in 3 years, Flint McAllen felt alive. Not because he'd saved anyone, but because they'd saved him right back. Morning came with the smell of real coffee. Not the terrible weak stuff they'd been making, but actual strong coffee that Mika had somehow traded for in town when she'd gone for supplies. Flint emerged to find all 5 women waiting on the porch. We need to talk, Ayanna said. Flint's stomach dropped. About the future. About what we're building here. All right. Ayanna stood, and the others rose with her. They faced him like a delegation, like people who'd made a decision and were ready to defend it. We want to expand the ranch, Ayanna said. Really expand it. More fencing, more crops, maybe some cattle if we can afford it. Turn this from a dying homestead into something that can sustain all of us long term. That's going to take a lot of work. We know. And money. We know that too. And time. Flint. Ayanna stepped forward. We're not asking for your permission. We're asking for your partnership. Will you build this with us? Really build it. Not as the man who saved us, but as one person among 6 who all have equal say in what happens next. Flint looked at each of them. Mika with her steady strength. Sonny with her tactical brilliance. Tula with her gentle competence. Wren with her growing confidence. Ayanna with her unshakable determination. These weren't victims. They were warriors. They were survivors. They were home. Yeah, Flint said, and his voice only cracked a little. Yeah, I'll build it with you. Ayanna's smile could have lit the dawn. Then we have work to do, she said. And they did. God, they did. But for the first time in longer than Flint could remember, he was ready for it. Ready for the early mornings and the late nights, ready for the failures and the small victories, ready for the back-breaking labor and the slow, steady progress. Ready to live again. Wren approached as the others headed to start the day's work. She pressed something into his hand, a small braided token made from grass and thread and colored with dyes from Tula's garden. What's this? Flint asked. A reminder, Wren said. So you don't forget we stayed. So you don't forget you're not alone anymore. Flint closed his fingers around it. I won't forget. Good. Wren smiled up at him. Because we're not going anywhere. This is home now, our home, all of us. She ran off to join the others, leaving Flint standing on the porch with a braided token in his hand and tears on his face. The sun climbed higher over Cold Mesa. The work continued, and somewhere in the barn, someone started singing. The singing stopped when the stranger rode up 3 weeks later. Flint was mending fence on the north boundary when he heard Mika's whistle, 2 short, 1 long. Danger. He dropped the wire cutters and ran, rifle already in his hands, before his boots hit the main yard. But the rider wasn't one of the 3 men from before. This was someone new. A woman, actually maybe 45-50, riding a paint horse and wearing a dress that had seen better days, but was still clean, still proper. She pulled up 30 yards out and raised both hands. "I'm not here for trouble," she called. "Just want to talk." Ayanna emerged from the barn, Sonny behind her. Tula appeared on the porch knife, visible in her belt. Wren stayed in the doorway, watching. "Talk about what?" Flint asked. "About the 5 women you're harboring. About the story that's spreading through every town between here and Tucson." The woman lowered her hands slowly. "My name's Catherine Walsh. I run a boarding house in Cold Mesa, and I need to know if what I'm hearing is true." "Depends on what you're hearing." "That an old rancher stood down 3 armed men to protect Apache women who'd escaped from slavers. That he gave them shelter and food and a share of his land." Catherine's eyes moved across each of them. "That he treated them like human beings instead of property." Flint's grip tightened on the rifle. "And if it is true, then I came to say thank you." The silence that followed felt like standing on the edge of a cliff. "Thank you," Ayanna said carefully. "For what?" Catherine dismounted slowly, keeping her movements visible and non-threatening. "My sister was Apache, married a white man, my brother-in-law. They had 2 children, beautiful kids, and then the soldiers came during one of their relocations and decided my sister belonged on a reservation, regardless of her marriage, her children, her life. They took her. My brother-in-law tried to stop them, and they shot him dead in his own yard." Her voice cracked but didn't break. "That was 8 years ago. I never saw my sister again. The children were sent to a missionary school, and I fought for 2 years to get them back. By the time I did, they didn't remember their mother's name." Catherine looked directly at Ayanna. "So if what I heard is true, if this man really stood up and said no to the kind of men who think they can own people, then yes, I came to say thank you, because someone finally did what the rest of us were too scared to do." Flint lowered the rifle. "You rode 3 hours to tell me that." "I rode 3 hours to tell you that you're not alone. There are people in Cold Mesa who support what you're doing here. Not everyone, God knows, but enough." Catherine reached into her saddlebag and pulled out a package wrapped in brown paper. "We took up a collection. Fabric thread, some coffee sugar, ammunition, practical things. Thought you might could use them." Ayanna moved forward, her expression unreadable. She took the package, unwrapped it slightly, and Flint saw tears spring to her eyes. "Why?" Ayanna whispered. "Why would you do this?" "Because some of us still remember what it means to be decent." Catherine smiled sadly. "And because watching you all work together these past weeks, the town's noticed. We've seen you come in for supplies, seen how you move like a family, seen that you're building something real. That matters to people, more than you might think." Mika stepped forward. "Not everyone feels that way." "No, you're right. There's plenty in town who think what Mr. McAllen did was wrong. Dangerous. Some are talking about getting the territorial marshal involved, claiming he's harboring runaways or some such nonsense." Catherine's face hardened. "But they're going to have a fight on their hands if they try. You have friends now, remember that." She mounted her horse again, gathered the reins. "One more thing," she said. "There's a lawyer in Tucson, James Whitmore. Good man, fair. He's helped Indians navigate the legal system before. If you need papers drawn up, ownership documents, anything to make this arrangement official and legal, he'll do it for cost. I already sent him a letter explaining the situation." Flint found his voice. "You didn't have to do any of this." "Yes, I did. We all did. Because if we don't stand up for what's right when it's hard, then we don't deserve to call ourselves civilized." Catherine tipped her hat. "You take care of each other. And if you need anything at all, you send word to Cold Mesa. There's people there who'll help." She rode off, dust trailing behind her. Nobody moved for a long moment. Then Wren started crying, not sad tears, but the kind that came from hope, realized from kindness, unexpected, from the sudden understanding that maybe, just maybe, the world wasn't entirely cruel. Tula wrapped an arm around her. "It's all right, little bird." "I know," Wren said, wiping her eyes. "That's why I'm crying." The next week brought changes Flint hadn't expected. A wagon arrived from Cold Mesa. No driver, just a note pinned to the seat that read, "From friends," and supplies piled in the back. More fabric, nails, 2 sacks of flour, a side of bacon, seeds for planting. 3 days after that, a young man showed up asking if they needed help with the heavy work. His name was Miguel, 19 years old. His family farm had failed, and he'd heard Cold Mesa Ranch was hiring. "We're not hiring," Flint said. "Oh." Miguel's face fell. "I heard, we're not hiring because we can't pay. But if you want to work for room and board and a share of whatever we produce, there's a place for you." Miguel's grin split his face. "When do I start?" "Right now. Mika will show you what needs doing." Mika led him away, already listing tasks in her efficient, no-nonsense way. Miguel listened like she was speaking gospel. Ayana watched them go. "We're growing." "Seems like." "That bother you?" "Should it?" "Some men don't like sharing what's theirs." Flint turned to look at her. "We already had this conversation. This place isn't mine. It's ours. And if it's going to survive, it needs to be bigger than 6 people trying to hold together a dying dream. It needs to be something that can actually thrive." "You really mean that?" "Have I given you reason to doubt it?" "No." Ayana's smile was small but genuine. "No, you haven't." By the end of November, they'd grown to 9 people. Miguel brought his sister Rosa, who knew herbs and healing. A former Buffalo soldier named Isaiah showed up, too old for the army, but too young to quit working, looking for purpose and finding it at Cold Mesa. They worked sunup to sundown, extended the fencing, planted winter wheat, built a second barn for storage. The original house was too small, so they started construction on a bunkhouse, rough but sturdy enough to get everyone through winter with dignity. The work was brutal. Flint's hands bled from hammer and saw. His back screamed every morning. He'd wake before dawn feeling every one of his 58 years and wonder how much longer his body could take this pace. But then he'd walk outside and see what they were building, not just structures, but community, and somehow he'd find the strength for another day. One evening in early December, Sonny found him sitting on the porch, too exhausted to move. "You're going to work yourself to death," she said. "Probably." "That's not funny." "Wasn't trying to be funny, just honest." Sonny sat beside him. She rarely initiated conversation, preferred action to words, but something in her expression said she had things to say tonight. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. "Building the ranch. I thought that was obvious." "No. Why are you killing yourself to build it? You could slow down, delegate more, let the younger ones handle the heavy work. But you're out there every day pushing harder than anyone, refusing to quit, even when your body's begging you to stop." Flint thought about how to answer that. "You know what I did for 3 years after Sarah died? Grieved, waited, just waited for everything to end. The ranch, my life, all of it. I'd wake up each morning hoping maybe today would be the day something would change, but knowing it wouldn't. That kind of waiting, it's worse than dying. It's like being a ghost in your own life. He rubbed his face, feeling the exhaustion in his bones. And then you all showed up. And suddenly there was a reason to keep going. Not just to survive, but to actually build something that mattered. So yeah, I'm pushing too hard. Yeah, I'm probably going to wear myself out. But I'd rather die building something with people I care about than live another 30 years waiting for nothing. Sunny was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "My husband was like you." Flint looked at her. "You were married." "For 6 years. He was cavalry, one of the scouts they hired to track Apache raiders. Good man, strong. Believed in doing right, even when it cost him." Her voice stayed steady, but Flint heard the grief underneath. He died trying to stop soldiers from burning a village. His own people turned on him because he wouldn't let them murder children. They shot him and left him in the desert. Christ, Sonny. I found him 3 days later, still alive barely, held him while he died. She turned to look at Flint. He told me not to stop fighting, not to let grief turn me hard, to find people worth protecting and protect them with everything I had. So that's what I'm doing here. That's why I stay. Flint didn't know what to say to that. Didn't know if there were words adequate for that kind of loss, that kind of love. "He'd be proud of you," he finally managed. "He'd like you," Sonny said. "You remind me of him. Stubborn, decent, too brave for your own good." She stood stretched. "Don't die on us, Flint. We just found a place worth staying for. Be a shame if you weren't around to see what it becomes." She walked away, leaving Flint alone with the stars and the weight of being seen, really seen, for the first time in years. Winter came hard that year. The first snow hit in mid-December, earlier than usual and heavier. They scrambled to finish the bunkhouse, working by lantern light until their fingers were too numb to hold hammers. Miguel and Isaiah hauled firewood until their backs gave out. Rosa organized food stores with an efficiency that probably saved their lives. The second storm hit on Christmas Eve. They huddled in the main house, all 9 of them packed into a space meant for 2, and listened to the wind scream. The temperature dropped so low that water froze in buckets inside. They burned everything they could spare, and it still wasn't enough. Ren pressed against Tula, shivering despite 3 blankets. "Are we going to die?" "No," Tula said firmly. "We survived worse than cold. We'll survive this." "How can you be sure?" "Because we're together, and together we're stronger than any storm." It was the kind of thing people said to comfort scared children. But looking around the room at Mika, stoking the fire at Sonny, checking windows for drafts at Ayana, rationing food at Isaiah and Miguel, taking turns staying awake to keep watch, Flint realized it wasn't just comfort. It was truth. They survived that night, and the next, and the next. When the storm finally broke 3 days later, they emerged to a world transformed. Snow everywhere 3 feet deep, and the landscape unrecognizable. But the building stood. The animals lived. And everyone who'd gone into that storm together came out the other side. "We did it," Rosa said, staring at the pristine white world. "We did." Ayana agreed. "Now we do it again. And again. As many times as it takes." January brought different challenges. Food ran lower than Flint liked. 2 of the horses got sick and required constant care. The roof on the original barn partially collapsed under snow weight and took a week to repair. But they learned how to work in bitter cold, learned how to stretch supplies, learned which tasks required many hands and which needed patience more than strength, learned each other's rhythms, each other's breaking points, each other's moments of quiet grace. On a clear day in late January, Flint and Ayana rode to the north boundary to check fences. The sky was that impossible winter blue that made everything sharp and beautiful. Their breath steamed in the cold air. "I've been thinking," Ayana said, about making this official, legal. What Catherine Walsh said about the lawyer in Tucson, we should do that. Get papers drawn up. Make this partnership real in the eyes of the law. You don't trust me. I trust you completely. But you're 58 years old, Flint. If something happens to you, what happens to us? To this place without legal documents, we're squatters on a dead man's land. We need protection, all of us. She was right. Flint knew she was right. But hearing it out loud made his mortality feel suddenly uncomfortably present. You think I'm going to die soon? He asked. I think you're human, and humans die. And when they do, the people they leave behind need to know where they stand. Fair enough. We'll ride to Tucson when the road's clear. Get it done proper. And you'll name all of us, make us equal partners. That was always the plan. Ayanna's relief was visible. Some men say one thing and do another when it comes to legal documents, when it becomes real instead of just words. I'm not some men. No, Ayanna said quietly. You're not. They rode in silence for a while, checking fence posts, looking for damage. The land stretched out around them, harsh, unforgiving, beautiful. Their land now, truly theirs. Can I tell you something? Ayanna asked. Anything. I'm scared. Flint looked at her in surprise. Ayanna, who'd faced down armed men without flinching, who'd organized their entire survival with steel determination, who'd never once shown weakness, scared of what he asked. Of this being real. Of letting myself believe we're safe here, that this is home, that we can actually build a life, instead of just surviving day to day. Because every time I've believed that before, it got ripped away. Her hands tightened on the reins. I'm terrified that if I let myself hope, really hope, it'll destroy me when it ends. What if it doesn't end? Everything ends, Flint. Not always. Not if you fight for it. I've been fighting my whole life. I'm tired. Then let the rest of us fight for a while. That's what family does. Ayanna's breath caught. Family? What else would you call this? She didn't answer, just reached over and took his hand. Scarred, work-roughened, real, and held it tight enough to hurt. They rode back to the ranch as the sun was setting, painting the snow gold and orange and impossible. When they arrived, smoke rose from both chimneys. Voices carried on the cold air, laughter, argument, song, home sounds, living sounds. Flint, Ayanna said as they dismounted. Yeah. Thank you for making me believe in hope again. February brought a visitor they didn't expect. Flint was in the barn when Isaiah called out. Rider coming, looks official. Official meant trouble. Always did. Flint grabbed his rifle and headed out, the others falling into positions they'd practiced. Ready, but not aggressive. Prepared, but not looking for a fight. The rider wore a badged territorial marshal and rode with the kind of wary confidence that said he'd seen violence, but preferred to avoid it. He pulled up at a respectful distance and raised one hand. Flint McAllen. That's me. Marshal Thomas Garrett. I need to talk to you about a complaint that's been filed. Flint's stomach dropped, but his voice stayed steady. What kind of complaint? The kind that says you're harboring fugitive Indians, that you're operating outside the law, that you're creating a situation that could lead to violence against white settlers. Garrett's expression was unreadable. I'm here to investigate. Investigate what exactly? We're just people working a ranch. That's not what the complaint says. It says you've got Apache women here who escaped from legal custody, that you refused to return them to their rightful owners, that you threatened armed men who came to retrieve their property. Their property? Ayanna stepped forward, her voice sharp as a blade. We're human beings, not property. Garrett looked at her for a long moment. Ma'am, I'm not here to debate philosophy. I'm here to establish facts and determine if laws have been broken. What laws? Flint asked. Show me the law that says helping people in need is illegal. Show me the papers that say these women aren't fugitives from a reservation or a legal sale. We were never assigned to a reservation, Ayanna said. We were captured by raiders and sold to men who had no legal right to buy us. The Indian agent who conducted the sale was arrested for corruption. The sale was never valid. You got proof of that. Do you have proof that it was valid? Garrett sighed. This isn't going to be simple, is it? Nothing about this is simple, Flint said. But here are the facts. These people showed up on my land, hurt, scared, and desperate. I gave them shelter. They've been working alongside me to build this ranch. We're operating as partners, not as owner and property. If that's illegal, then arrest me. But you're not taking them. Mr. McAllen. Marshall, look around. Look at what we've built here. Look at these people. They're not criminals. They're not troublemakers. They're just trying to survive and make something decent in a world that keeps telling them they don't have the right to exist. Garrett dismounted slowly, his hand nowhere near his weapon. He walked through the ranch, examining everything with careful eyes. The buildings, the fences, the gardens covered in snow but clearly planted with care. The animals healthy and well-tended. He spoke to each person individually, asked questions, listened to answers, watched how they interacted with each other. Finally, as the sun was setting, he came back to where Flint waited on the porch. I'm going to tell you something that could cost me my job, Garrett said. The complaint was filed by one of the men you ran off, James Kershaw. He's been pushing hard for me to come out here and restore order. He wants me to arrest you, seize the women, and essentially destroy what you're building. And I'm not going to do it. Because everything I've seen today tells me you're doing exactly what you should be doing, helping people who need help. But that doesn't mean this is over. Flint's chest tightened. What do you mean? I mean Kershaw isn't going to stop. He's got friends in the territorial government connections in Tucson. He's going to keep pushing until someone with less conscience than me comes out here. Garrett pulled out a piece of paper. This is the name of that lawyer Catherine Walsh mentioned, James Whitmore. You need to get to him fast. Get legal papers drawn up making this partnership official. Get documentation that these women aren't fugitives. Build a legal wall around this place so thick that even Kershaw's connections can't knock it down. We're planning to go to Tucson when the road's clear. Don't wait. Go now, tomorrow if possible. Because I can only delay this complaint for so long, and once it goes higher up the chain, I won't be able to protect you anymore. Ayanna joined them on the porch. Why are you helping us? Garrett looked at her, and something old and sad moved in his eyes. Because 20 years ago I followed orders I shouldn't have followed. I helped move Cherokee families off land that was rightfully theirs. Watched children cry while their homes burned. Watched old people die on a march that should never have happened. And I told myself I was just doing my job, following the law-keeping order. His voice cracked. But the law was wrong. And following it made me wrong. I can't undo what I did 20 years ago, but I can make damn sure I don't make the same mistake today. He mounted his horse. Get to Tucson, Mr. McAllen. Make this legal, because next time someone files a complaint, it might not be me who comes to investigate. He rode away into the gathering darkness. So, they left for Tucson the next morning. Flint, Ayanna, and Sonny. 3 riders on horseback pushing hard despite the cold, despite the uncertainty, despite the fear that they might return to find everything destroyed. But they had to try. The ride took 2 days. They reached Tucson on a Tuesday afternoon, found James Whitmore's office on a side street that smelled of horses and dust and desperate hope. Whitmore was younger than Flint expected, maybe 35, with sharp eyes and ink-stained fingers. He listened to their story without interrupting, taking notes, asking pointed questions that cut right to the heart of things. This is complicated, he finally said. Can you help us? Ayanna asked. I can try, but you need to understand what you're up against. Legally, the status of Apache individuals is murky. The reservation system creates all sorts of problematic situations. And if those men who claim they bought you can produce any documentation, even fraudulent documentation, it could be difficult to challenge. But the agent was arrested, Sonny said. Yes, and that helps. But arrests don't always mean convictions. And even if he is convicted, sales conducted before his arrest might still be considered valid by some courts. Flint leaned forward. So what's our move? Whitmore tapped his pen against his desk. We create a new legal reality. We draw up partnership papers making all of you equal owners of the ranch. We file them with the territorial government. We create documentation showing continuous residence and work. We build a paper trail so strong that anyone trying to separate you will have to fight through layers of legal protection. How long will that take? The papers, I can have them ready by tomorrow. Filing them, another 2 days. But Mr. McAllen, you need to understand this doesn't make you bulletproof. It just makes you harder to attack legally. It's more than we had yesterday. True enough. Whitmore stood. Come back tomorrow afternoon. I'll have everything ready for signatures. And Mr. McAllen, whatever you're building out there, keep building it. The world needs more people willing to do the right thing even when it's hard. They found rooms at a boarding house and tried to sleep. Flint lay awake listening to the sounds of town drunks singing, horses clopping past, doors slamming. He thought about Cold Mesa Ranch, about the 8 people holding things together while he was gone, about everything they'd built and how easily it could be destroyed. Ayanna knocked on his door near midnight. Can't sleep either, she asked. No. Want company? Yeah. They sat by the window watching Tucson's nightlife pass below. Neither spoke for a long time. I keep thinking about what Garrett said, Ayanna finally murmured. About how this isn't over. About how someone worse might come next time. I know. Are we fooling ourselves, Flint? Are we building something that can't possibly last? Maybe. Probably. But what's the alternative? Give up and scatter. Go back to running. Let them win. No. God, no. I'm so tired of running. Then we fight. We build. We make this so real, so undeniable that they can't tear it down without exposing themselves for what they are. Ayanna turned to look at him. You really believe we can win this? I believe we have to try. And I believe that what we're building matters not just for us, but for everyone watching. Catherine Walsh saw it. Marshall Garrett saw it. People are noticing that it's possible to build something different, something better. We can't give up on that. Even if it costs us everything. Especially then. Ayanna reached out and took his hand. All right. Then we fight. They signed the papers the next afternoon. Whitmore had done good work, clear, comprehensive legal documents that established Cold Mesa Ranch as a partnership between 9 equal owners. Each name listed, each share specified, each person granted full rights to the land and its proceeds. This is official now, Whitmore said as they signed. Recognized by territorial law. If anyone tries to claim these women are property or fugitives, they'll have to overcome the fact that they're legal landowners, with documentation to prove it. Will it be enough? Sonny asked. Honestly, I don't know, but it's a hell of a lot better than having nothing. They filed the papers, with the territorial clerk paid fees they could barely afford, and got stamped copies for their records. Then they rode hard for home, pushing the horses faster than was wise, desperate to get back before something went wrong. They reached Cold Mesa Ranch 2 days later, exhausted and anxious. Everything was fine, better than fine, actually. Miguel and Isaiah had finished the bunkhouse roof. Rosa had organized the food stores even more efficiently. Tula's garden had been expanded and prepared for spring planting. Wren had started teaching Rosa to read. The world hadn't ended while they were gone. Flint dismounted and just stood there, looking at everything they'd built, feeling the weight of the papers in his saddlebag, proof that this was real, that they existed, that they mattered in the eyes of the law. Mika came out of the barn, saw them, and her whole face transformed with relief. You're back. We're back. And we got it done. The papers. Signed, filed, official. Ayanna pulled out her copy. We're legal partners now, all of us. 9 people with equal claim to this land. Mika took the paper with shaking hands, read every word, then pressed it to her chest. It's real. It's real. That night they gathered everyone in the main house. Flint stood by the fire holding the official documents and read each name aloud. Flint McAllen, Ayanna Smith, Mika Begay, Sonny Greyhawk, Tula Swiftwater, Ren Morningstar, Miguel Santos, Rosa Santos, Isaiah Washington. 9 names. 9 people. 9 equal partners in something that 3 months ago hadn't existed. This is who we are, Flint said. This is what we built. And anyone who tries to take it away is going to have to go through all of us to do it. Ren started crying again, happy tears, strong tears, the kind that came from being seen as fully human in a world that constantly denied her humanity. Tula held her close and sang softly. Mika stood with her shoulders back, fierce and proud. Sonny's smile was small but real. Miguel and Rosa held hands like they were anchoring each other. Isaiah wiped his eyes and wasn't ashamed. And Ayanna looked at Flint across the room and mouthed 2 words, "Thank you." But Flint shook his head. No thanks needed. This wasn't his gift to them. It was their gift to each other. The fire crackled. Outside, winter wind sang through the eaves, and inside Cold Mesa Ranch, 9 people who'd found each other against impossible odds stood together and claimed their right to exist, to build, to be home. Spring came late that year, but when it finally arrived, it brought more than just thaw. Flint was fixing the water pump when he heard the wagons, not 1, but 3, creaking up the road from Cold Mesa. He straightened, wiped his hands, and felt that old familiar tension coil in his gut. Visitors meant complications, always had. But these weren't strangers. Catherine Walsh sat in the lead wagon, and behind her were 2 families Flint recognized from town, the Hendersons and the Pratts. Good people mostly. Kept to themselves, worked hard, didn't cause trouble. Catherine climbed down before the wagon fully stopped. "We need to talk. About the fact that James Kershaw is organizing. He's been to every ranch and farm within 50 miles telling people you're running a renegade operation, that you're breaking laws, that you're bringing danger to the whole territory." She paused. "And some people are listening." Ayanna emerged from the barn, Sonny right behind her. Miguel and Isaiah appeared from the north field, tools still in hand. Everyone moving into defensive positions without being asked, without needing direction. "How many?" Ayanna asked. "Listening. Maybe 20 families. Actually willing to do something about it, less. But Kershaw's persistent. He's calling a town meeting next week. Says he's going to demand the territorial governor take action." Flint felt Ayanna tense beside him. What kind of action? The kind where armed men come and restore order. Catherine's face was grim. The kind where people get hurt or killed, and everyone pretends it was necessary. Henderson climbed down from his wagon, a big man, thick-shouldered, with hands like ham hocks, and a face weathered by 40 years of hard living. "We came to tell you, we're not going to let that happen." "Why?" Flint asked. "Why risk yourselves?" "Because what you're doing here matters." Henderson gestured at the ranch. "We've watched you all winter. Watched you work together, build together, survive together. Watched you treat each other like family instead of like how most people treat Indians." His wife Sarah, not Flint's Sarah, but the name still hit hard, stepped forward. "My grandfather was Cherokee. I'm only 1/8 enough that I can pass as white enough that people don't ask questions. But I remember the stories he told about forced marches, stolen land, broken promises. And I'll be damned if I stand by and watch it happen again when I can do something to stop it." Pratt spoke up next, his voice quiet but certain. "We're farmers, Mr. McAllen. We're not fighters, but we know right from wrong, and what Kershaw's doing is wrong." Flint looked at the 3 wagons, at the determined faces, at these people who'd come all this way to stand with them. Something shifted in his chest, not hope exactly, but something close. the understanding that they weren't alone in this fight. "What do you need from us?" Ayanna asked. "Show up to the meeting," Catherine said. "All of you. Let people see what you've built. Let them see you're not criminals or savages or whatever Kershaw's telling them you are. Let them see you're just people trying to live." "That could make things worse," Sonny said. "Could give them targets. Could also change minds," Henderson countered. "Hard to hate people once you've looked them in the eye and seen their humanity." "You don't know that," Mika said from the barn doorway. "I've looked plenty of people in the eye right before they decided I wasn't human enough to matter." The silence that followed was heavy and uncomfortable. Catherine broke it. "You're right. I can't promise it'll work. Can't promise people will change their minds or that hearts will soften or any of that. But I can promise that if you don't show up, if you hide, Kershaw wins by default. At least this way you have a chance." Flint looked at Ayanna. She looked at Sonny. Sonny looked at Mika. The question passed between them without words. Do we risk it? Do we put ourselves in a room full of people who might want us dead? Ren came out of the house, moving to stand between Flint and Ayanna. She didn't look scared anymore, just resolved. "We should go," Ren said. "We should show them we're not afraid." "Even if they hurt us?" Tula asked, joining them. "Especially then. Because if we hide, we prove them right. We prove we don't belong. But if we stand there and show them we're just as human as they are..." Ren's voice caught. "Maybe some of them will see it, maybe not all, but some. But..." Ayanna put a hand on Ren's shoulder. "You've gotten brave, little bird. I learned from the best." The decision crystallized. They would go. All of them. They would walk into that meeting and face whatever came together. "All right," Flint said. "We'll be there. When is it? Next Tuesday, 7 o'clock, at the town hall." Catherine climbed back into her wagon. "And Mr. McAllen. Come prepared. Kershaw's not going to fight fair." "Neither are we." The three wagons rolled away, leaving Flint and the others standing in their yard, contemplating what came next. Isaiah spoke first. "This is a trap." "Probably," Flint agreed. "We're going anyway." "Yeah." "Good." Isaiah cracked his knuckles. "Been too long since I had a proper fight." Miguel laughed nervously. "You think there'll be fighting?" "There's always fighting," Sonny said quietly. "Question is whether it's with fists or words or bullets." Rosa moved close to her brother. "I'm scared." "Me too," Miguel admitted. "But we're going anyway, right?" "Right." Flint looked at all of them, these 9 people who'd become more than partners, more than friends. Family. That's what they were now, chosen and real and worth fighting for. "We've got 5 days," he said. "Let's use them." They spent those 5 days preparing in ways that had nothing to do with weapons. Tula made new clothes, simple but clean, presentable. Rosa practiced what she'd say if anyone asked her questions. Miguel and Isaiah rehearsed staying calm, even if people provoked them. Sonny planned exit routes in case things went bad. And Ayanna coached them all on how to stand, how to speak, how to present themselves as dignified and human rather than threatening or submissive. "Look them in the eye," she said during one practice session. "Don't stare, but don't look away either. Let them see you're not afraid even if you are. Let them see you're not ashamed of who you are or what you've built." "What if they attack us?" Ren asked. "Then we defend ourselves, but we don't start it. We don't give them an excuse to call us violent or dangerous. We're better than that." "Are we..." Mika's voice was sharp. "Better than people who want us dead? Better than men who tried to buy us like cattle?" "What makes us better?" "Because we choose to be," Ayanna said simply. "Every day we choose to build instead of destroy, to protect instead of harm, to hope instead of hate. That's what makes us better." Mika looked away, her jaw tight. "Hope doesn't stop bullets." "No, but it's what we fight for when the bullets start flying." The night before the meeting, nobody slept much. Flint found himself on the porch again, staring at stars, thinking about all the ways tomorrow could go wrong. Sarah's voice whispered in his memory. Not real, just an echo of who she'd been, what she'd believed. "You're doing the right thing," Phantom Sarah said. "The right thing might get us all killed. Then at least you'll die standing up." Ayanna joined him in the darkness. She didn't say anything, just sat close enough that their shoulders touched. Warm. Solid. Real. "I'm terrified," she admitted. "Good. Means you're sane. What if we're making a mistake? What if showing up just gives Kershaw exactly what he wants all of us in one place, easy targets? Then we make him work for it." Flint turned to look at her. "But I don't think that's what happens. I think we walk in there, we show them we're human, and at least some of them remember what decency looks like. And if they don't, then we've lost nothing we weren't going to lose anyway." Ayanna leaned her head against his shoulder. "When did you get so wise?" "I'm not wise. I'm just too tired to keep being afraid." They sat like that until dawn crept over the horizon, painting the world in shades of hope and uncertainty. Tuesday came too fast and too slow all at once. They dressed carefully, deliberately. Flint wore his one good shirt, the one Sarah had made for him 15 years ago. Ayanna wore the dress Tula had sewn, simple but elegant. The others followed suit, cleaned up, presentable human. The ride to Cold Mesa took 2 hours. Nobody spoke much. Miguel's hands shook on the reins. Rosa prayed quietly in Spanish. Isaiah sat straight-backed and stone-faced, a soldier heading into battle one more time. They arrived at 6:30. The town hall was already filling up, more people than Flint had expected, maybe 70 or 80, and more arriving every minute. Some faces were familiar, others weren't. Some looked curious, others hostile. Most just looked uncertain. Kershaw stood near the front, talking to a group of men who looked exactly like what they were, trouble looking for an excuse. When he saw Flint and the others enter, his smile was poisonous. "Well, well," Kershaw said loud enough for everyone to hear. "The criminals decided to show up." "We're not criminals," Ayanna said, her voice carrying. "We're landowners, legal partners in a legitimate ranch, and we have documentation to prove it." "Documentation?" Kershaw laughed. "You mean papers bought from some corrupt lawyer that doesn't make you legal? That makes you clever thieves." "The lawyer isn't corrupt." Catherine Walsh stepped forward from the crowd. "James Whitmore is one of the most respected attorneys in Tucson, and the papers were filed with the territorial government and approved, which makes them more legal than anything you've got, Kershaw." "Stay out of this, Catherine. This doesn't concern you." "The hell it doesn't. This is my town too, and I'll be damned if I let you turn it into a place where helping people in need becomes a crime." A murmur ran through the crowd, some agreeing, some not, most just watching to see what happened next. Marshal Garrett stood near the back, his face carefully neutral, but his hand never far from his gun. When he saw Flint looking, he gave the smallest nod. Not support exactly, but acknowledgement. "You're on your own, but I'm watching." The territorial administrator, a thin man named Winters, who looked like he wished he was anywhere else, called the meeting to order. "We're here to discuss allegations against Flint McAllen and his associates. Mr. Kershaw has filed a formal complaint claiming that McAllen is operating outside territorial law. Mr. Kershaw, you have the floor." Kershaw stood, and Flint realized the man had prepared. Really prepared. He had notes, documents, testimonies from people who'd supposedly witnessed criminal activity. "Flint McAllen is harboring fugitives from legal custody," Kershaw began. "These 5 Apache women were sold in a legal transaction. They escaped. McAllen refused to return them and threatened violence against men who had every right to reclaim their property. He's created a dangerous situation." "We're not property," Ayanna interrupted. "And the sale was never legal. The Indian agent who conducted it was arrested for corruption 3 days after your supposed purchase. The territorial court invalidated all transactions conducted during his tenure, which means you never owned us. You never had any legal claim. You just had money and thought that was enough. Kershaw's face went red. You're a liar. I'm standing here with court documents that say otherwise. Ayanna pulled papers from her bag. This is the court order invalidating sales conducted by Indian agent William Preston. This is documentation that none of us were ever assigned to a reservation, which means we weren't fugitives from anything. And this is the legal partnership agreement, making all of us equal owners of Cold Mesa Ranch, filed and approved by territorial authorities. She held up each document, let the crowd see them, let the reality sink in. So, tell me, Mr. Kershaw, who's the criminal here, us for trying to live free, or you for trying to buy human beings? The crowd erupted. Some shouting agreement, some disagreement, everyone talking at once. Winters banged his gavel until people quieted down. This is highly irregular, Winters said, looking flustered. Mr. Kershaw, if what she says is true, it's not true. She's lying. Those papers are forgeries. They're not forgeries, Marshal Garrett said, stepping forward. I've seen them myself, verified them with the territorial clerk. They're legitimate. Kershaw wheeled on him. You're supposed to be enforcing the law, not helping criminals. I am enforcing the law that says people can't be bought and sold, the law that says when a corrupt official's actions are invalidated, sales conducted under his authority are void. The law that says 9 people working a ranch together as legal partners aren't breaking any rules. Garrett's voice was steel. The only person here who seems interested in breaking laws is you, Kershaw, and I'm getting real tired of it. This is an outrage. What's an outrage? Henderson stood up from the crowd. Is that we're wasting time on this nonsense when there are real problems to deal with. Drought-coming crops to plant, actual work to be done. These folks at Cold Mesa aren't hurting anyone. They're just trying to survive like the rest of us. They're Indians, someone shouted from the back. Some of them are, Henderson agreed. So what, my wife's part? Cherokee. Does that make her less human, less deserving of dignity? That's different. How? Explain to me how it's different. The man couldn't, or wouldn't. He just sat down muttering. Pratt stood next. I've known Flint McAllen for 10 years. He's a good man, honest, fair. If he says these women needed help, I believe him. And I don't see how helping people in need is a crime worth prosecuting. More voices joined in, some supporting Kershaw, some supporting Flint, most just confused and wanting the whole mess to go away. The meeting devolved into chaos, everyone talking over everyone else, until Winters finally managed to restore order. Enough, Winters shouted. Enough. This is getting us nowhere. Mr. Kershaw, based on the evidence presented, I don't see grounds for criminal charges. The partnership appears to be legal, the women don't appear to be fugitives, and Marshal Garrett confirms no laws are being broken. Unless you have additional evidence. I have evidence that they're dangerous, that they threatened me and my men with guns. After you came onto their property, claiming you owned people, Garrett said flatly. That's called self-defense, Kershaw. And it's legal. This is a travesty. This is over, Winters said firmly. The complaint is dismissed. Mr. McAllen, you and your partners are free to go. And Mr. Kershaw, I suggest you find better uses for your time than harassing people who've done nothing wrong. Kershaw looked like he wanted to explode. His face was purple, his hands clenched into fists, his whole body vibrating with rage. For a moment, Flint thought the man might actually attack someone. But he didn't. He just turned and stormed out, his supporters trailing behind him, and the door slammed so hard it rattled the windows. The room stayed tense for another minute, then slowly people began filing out. Some stopped to shake Flint's hand, to tell Ayanna they were sorry, to acknowledge that maybe they'd been wrong. Others left without a word, their faces closed, their minds unchanged. Catherine approached as the room emptied. That went better than I expected. Did it? Ayanna asked. Kershaw's still out there, still angry, still dangerous. True. But you stood your ground, showed you're not afraid, proved you're within the law. That matters. Catherine smiled. And you changed some minds. I saw it. Maybe not everyone, but enough. Henderson and his wife stopped by next. You ever need anything? Henderson said. You send word. We're neighbors now. That means something. It does, Flint said. Thank you. They rode home as the sun was setting, exhausted and wired and uncertain what it all meant. Victory felt too strong a word, but they hadn't lost either. They'd stood up, been counted, and survived. That had to be enough. Back at the ranch, they gathered in the main house, and nobody quite knew what to say. The relief was palpable, but so was the understanding that this wasn't over. Kershaw was still out there. His anger was still real. The danger hadn't passed, just changed shape. What now? Rosa asked. Now we keep building, Ayanna said. We keep working. We keep proving every single day that we deserve to be here, that we're not going anywhere. And if Kershaw comes back, then we deal with it, together, like we deal with everything. Miguel stood. I want to say something. Before I came here, I thought I was nothing. My family's farm failed. My father died, my sister and I were starving. And then I found this place, found you all. And you treated me like I mattered, like I was worth something. So whatever comes next, whatever Kershaw does, whatever problems we face, I'm not going anywhere. This is home. Your family. And that's worth fighting for. Rosa nodded, tears in her eyes. What he said? Isaiah cleared his throat. I've fought in wars, seen men die over stupid things, pride, greed, hatred. But I never had something worth dying for. Not really, until now. So yeah, I'm staying. We all are. And anyone who tries to take this away is going to have a hell of a fight. One by one they pledged the same. Mika with her fierce determination, Sonny with her quiet strength, Tula with her gentle resolve, Ren with her growing courage. And when everyone had spoken, Flint stood. I buried my wife 3 years ago, buried my hope right alongside her. Spent 3 years waiting to die, convinced that nothing mattered anymore. And then you showed up. All of you. And you gave me something I thought I'd lost forever, a reason to keep living. A reason to fight. A reason to believe that maybe, just maybe, the world can still be a decent place if enough people are willing to work for it. His voice cracked, but he kept going. So thank you. For staying. For fighting. For building this with me. For making me remember what it means to be alive. Ayanna crossed the room and pulled him into a hug, tight and fierce and real. Then the others joined all of them in one tangled embrace, holding each other up, holding each other together. 9 people who'd found each other against impossible odds. 9 people who'd chosen to stay when running would have been easier. 9 people who'd become family in every way that mattered. They stood like that for a long time, drawing strength from each other, preparing for whatever came next. Because something would come next. It always did. But they'd face it together, and that made all the difference. 3 days later, Kershaw's ranch burned. Flint heard about it from a rider passing through. The whole place gone, buildings collapsed, animals dead, everything destroyed. Kershaw was ruined. Financially, socially, completely. And people were saying it was arson. The rider didn't say who they suspected, but his eyes kept sliding toward Cold Mesa Ranch's residents, kept looking for guilt or satisfaction or evidence of involvement. He found none because there was none to find. They'd been home all night, could prove it, and had no reason to burn Kershaw's place anyway. They'd won their fight legally. Why risk everything with violence? But the accusation hung there anyway, unspoken but present. And Flint realized this was how it would be from now on. Every problem, Every incident, every crime, would somehow circle back to them. They'd be blamed for things they didn't do simply because they existed, because they were different, because some people needed an enemy. "We should make a statement," Miguel said when he heard. "Tell people it wasn't us." "Won't matter," Mika said. "People believe what they want to believe." So we do nothing. We do what we've been doing. We work, we build, we prove through actions that we're not who they think we are. She was right. They all knew it. So they went back to work, finished the second barn, expanded the fencing, planted the spring crops. Prepared for summer for harvest for the future, they were building one day at a time. And slowly, grudgingly, the suspicion faded. Other explanations for Kershaw's fire emerged: debt insurance fraud, simple, bad luck. The focus shifted away from Cold Mesa Ranch and back to their own lives, their own problems. By midsummer, people stopped staring when they came to town, stopped whispering, started treating them like neighbors instead of threats. It wasn't acceptance, not really, just tolerance. But tolerance was enough for now. One evening in July, Flint and Ayanna sat on the porch watching sunset paint the sky impossible colors. The day had been long and hot, the work endless but satisfying in the way that building something real always was. "You ever think about how different things could have been?" Ayanna asked. "If we'd never found your barn, if you'd turned us away, if any of 100 things had gone differently. Every day. Does it scare you? How easily this all could have not happened?" Flint thought about it. "No, because it did happen. We made choices, you, me, all of us, and those choices led here, to this. And I wouldn't change it for anything. Not even if it meant less danger, less struggle. Not even then, because struggle gives meaning. And this," he gestured at the ranch, at the life they'd built, "this has more meaning than anything else I've ever done." Ayanna smiled. "You know what I think?" "What?" "I think you're finally healing. From losing Sarah. From 3 years of grief. You're finally letting yourself live again." "Maybe. Or maybe you all just dragged me back to life whether I wanted to come or not." "Is that so bad?" "No," Flint said quietly. "It's not bad at all." They sat in comfortable silence, as stars emerged one by one, as night settled over the ranch like a blanket, as life continued in all its messy, complicated, beautiful ways. Inside the house, someone started singing, Tula's voice clear and pure, carrying a melody from a world that had tried so hard to destroy her but couldn't quite manage it. And sitting there on that porch, surrounded by family, protected by love, building something that mattered, Flint McAllen finally understood what it meant to be home. Not the place. The people. Always the people. The singing faded into the night, and Flint found himself thinking about permanence, about roots, about what it meant to build something that might outlast him. He was 59 now. His hands ached every morning. His back protested every time he bent to lift something heavy. The years were catching up, and for the first time since Sarah died, that felt like something worth mourning, because now he had reasons to want more time. Ayanna noticed him rubbing his shoulder the next morning. "You're hurting." "Just age." "Just age can kill you if you're not careful." "I'm always careful." "Liar." But she smiled when she said it. "Isaiah and Miguel can handle the heavy work today. You rest." "I'm not an invalid." "Nobody said you were. But you're not 20 anymore either. And we need you around for a long time, so stop being stubborn and let people help." Flint wanted to argue. Pride demanded it. But the truth was, his shoulder did hurt like hell, and maybe she was right. Maybe it was time to start accepting that he couldn't do everything himself anymore. "All right," he said. "But just today. We'll see." She walked away before he could protest further, already organizing the day's work, already making sure everything ran smoothly. Watching her, Flint realized something that had been building for months, but he'd been too scared to acknowledge. He loved her. Not like he'd loved Sarah, that had been young, Love passionate and desperate and all-consuming. This was different, quieter, built on shared struggle and mutual respect, and the kind of understanding that only came from surviving hell together. And he had no idea what to do about it. The question became moot 3 days later when a wagon rolled up carrying two people Flint had never seen before, a white man in his 30s and an Apache woman about the same age holding a baby wrapped in blankets. The man climbed down slowly, hands visible, non-threatening. "Mr. McAllen." "That's me. My name's Daniel Cross. This is my wife Naomi. We heard about what you're doing here, about Cold Mesa Ranch, about how you're building something different." He paused, gathering courage. "We need help." Naomi stepped down, the baby fussing in her arms. Up close, Flint could see the exhaustion in both their faces, the desperation, the fear. "What kind of help?" Ayanna asked, emerging from the barn. "The kind where people don't try to kill us for being married," Daniel said bluntly. "Naomi's Apache. I'm white. We met 3 years ago, fell in love, got married by a missionary who didn't care about blood, had a baby. Thought we could make it work." "But you can't," Sonny said, understanding in her voice. "No. Her tribe won't accept me. My family disowned me. The towns between here and New Mexico have made it clear we're not welcome. We're running out of places to go." Daniel's voice cracked. "We heard you might be different, that you might understand." Flint looked at Ayanna. She looked at the others. The question passed between them silently. Do we take this risk? Do we invite more complications, more danger, more reasons for people to hate us? Ren pushed through the group and walked straight to Naomi. "Can I see the baby?" Naomi hesitated, then pulled back the blanket. The baby was tiny, maybe 3 months old, with dark eyes and darker hair, and the most impossibly small fingers Flint had ever seen. "She's beautiful," Ren breathed. "What's her name?" "Grace," Naomi said softly. "We named her Grace because she's the only good thing in a world that keeps trying to be cruel." "That's a perfect name." Ren looked back at the others. "We have to help them. We have to." "It's not that simple," Mika started. "Yes, it is," Ren interrupted. "We were running once, desperate, scared, and someone helped us when they didn't have to. Now it's our turn. That's what family does." The word landed like a stone in water ripples spreading. "She's right," Tula said. "We help." Miguel nodded. "Always." Rosa crossed herself. "Of course we help." Isaiah just grunted agreement, which for him was practically a speech. Mika looked at Sonny, who shrugged. "Guess we're doing this." "Guess we are." Flint turned to Daniel and Naomi. "You can stay. We've got room in the bunkhouse. Food enough to share. Work enough for everyone. But you need to understand this place draws trouble. People who hate what we represent, who want to tear us down. If you stay, you're part of that fight." "We're already in that fight," Daniel said. "Have been since the day we said our vows. At least here we won't be alone." "No," Ayanna said. "Here, you definitely won't be alone." They settled Daniel and Naomi into the bunkhouse, got them fed, showed them the work that needed doing. By evening, it felt like they'd always been there, like the ranch had simply expanded to hold them. That night, Flint found himself unable to sleep again. Too many thoughts spinning, too many worries about what came next. He wandered out to the porch and wasn't surprised to find Ayanna already there. "Can't sleep either?" he asked. "Baby's crying. Not used to that sound anymore." "Me neither." He sat beside her. "We did the right thing taking them in." "I know. Doesn't mean I'm not scared about it." "Scared of what?" "Of how much we have to lose now. When it was just us 9, the risk felt manageable. But now there's a baby. An infant who can't defend herself, can't run, can't survive if everything goes wrong." Ayanna's voice was tight. "What if we can't protect her?" "We will." "You can't promise that." "No, but I can promise we'll die trying if it comes to it." Ayanna turned to look at him. "You really mean that?" You'd die for a baby you just met. I'd die for any child, for anyone who needed protection. But especially for her because she represents what we're building here. The possibility that different people can come together and create something new. Something better. If we can't protect that, what's the point of any of this? The point is survival. No. Survival's the baseline. The point is living. Really living. With purpose and meaning and love. He took a breath. Speaking of which, I need to tell you something. That sounds ominous. Maybe. I don't know. Flint's heart hammered. I love you. The words hung between them, naked and vulnerable and terrifying. Ayanna didn't move, didn't speak, just stared at him with an expression he couldn't read. You don't have to say anything, Flint continued quickly. I just needed you to know, because tomorrow's not guaranteed, and I'm tired of leaving important things unsaid and... She kissed him. It wasn't dramatic or passionate or any of the things poets wrote about. It was just a kiss, warm and real and right, that said everything words couldn't. When they pulled apart, Ayanna was smiling. I love you too, you stubborn old fool. I'm only 59. That's old. You're 36, and you're deflecting. She took his hand. I love you. Have for months. Was just too scared to say it because the last time I loved someone, soldiers killed him in front of me, and I had to keep walking like my heart wasn't bleeding out on the ground. I'm not going anywhere. You better not, because I'm done losing people I love, done running, done being afraid to hold on to good things because they might disappear. Her grip tightened. So you stay alive, Flint McAllen. You stay alive, and you stay with me, and we build this life together. Understood? Yes, ma'am. They sat like that for hours, holding hands, watching stars, letting themselves believe that maybe, just maybe, they deserved happiness. Summer deepened, and the ranch thrived in ways Flint had never imagined. The crops came in strong. The cattle they'd bought with money, saved from selling surplus, flourished. Daniel proved to be excellent with animals. Naomi's knowledge of plants and herbs expanded Tula's garden exponentially, and baby Grace became the unofficial mascot of Cold Mesa Ranch. Everyone took turns holding her, caring for her, teaching her to smile and laugh and exist without fear. Watching Wren cradle Grace with such careful tenderness, Flint realized the girl who'd arrived bruised and silent had transformed into a young woman who knew how to nurture, how to protect, how to love. They all had, really. Miguel stood straighter now, spoke with confidence. Rosa's prayers became less desperate, more grateful. Isaiah smiled occasionally, which was basically a miracle. Mika's sharp edges softened just enough to let people in. Sonny talked about her dead husband without that gutted look in her eyes. And Tula sang more, laughed more, lived more. They were healing. All of them. One August morning, Catherine Walsh arrived with news that froze everyone's blood. Kershaw's dead. Flint set down the tool he'd been holding. What? Found him this morning. Hanged himself in what's left of his barn. Catherine's face was grim. Left a note. Said he couldn't live with the shame of losing everything. Blamed you. Blamed all of you. Said you destroyed his life. We didn't. Ayanna started. I know you didn't. Everyone with sense knows you didn't. But that note's going to cause problems. People are already talking, saying maybe you drove him to it. Maybe you're dangerous after all. That's insane, Miguel said. We haven't even seen him since his ranch burned. Doesn't matter. Grief makes people irrational. Anger makes them stupid. And Kershaw had friends, not many, but enough to cause trouble if they decide you're responsible for his death. Marshal Garrett rode up before anyone could respond, his face set in hard lines. Heard you got the news. Just now. Good. Then you won't be surprised when I tell you to be careful. Very careful. Kershaw's death is being investigated, and while I don't think you had anything to do with it, there are people pushing for charges. Claiming you harassed him, drove him to suicide something. On what evidence? Sonny asked. On the evidence that you exist, and he's dead, and people need someone to blame. Garrett dismounted. I'm doing everything I can to shut this down, but you need to watch yourselves. Don't go into town alone. Don't give anyone a reason to claim you're being aggressive or threatening. Just be invisible for a while. We're not good at invisible, Mika said dryly. Then learn. Because if this goes bad, I might not be able to protect you. He rode away, leaving them with fear and frustration, and the bitter understanding that even death wouldn't end Kershaw's crusade against them. That night, they gathered in the main house for what felt like a war council. We should leave, Daniel said. Pack up, move on, start over somewhere else. Why stay and fight when we could just go? Because running doesn't work, Naomi said quietly. We tried that. Ran for 3 years before we found this place. And everywhere we went, the problems followed. At some point, you have to stop running and stand. Easy to say when you're not the one putting a baby at risk. I am the one putting my baby at risk. Our baby. And I'm saying we stand. Daniel looked at Grace, sleeping in her makeshift crib, his face torn between love and fear. What if standing gets her killed? What if running teaches her that's all she can ever do? Naomi met his eyes. I want her to grow up knowing her parents fought for something. That they didn't just survive, but lived. That they built something worth protecting. Even if it costs everything. Especially then. The argument circled for hours. Some wanted to leave, some to stay. Everyone scared of making the wrong choice. Finally, Flint stood, his patience exhausted. Enough. We're not leaving. We're not running. We built this place with our blood and sweat and tears, and we're not giving it up because a dead man told lies and angry people believed them. Flint, Ayanna started. No, listen. All of you. I've run from things in my life. Run from grief, from pain, from responsibility. And it never worked. It never made things better. The only time things got better was when I stopped running and started building. When you all showed up and forced me to care again, to fight again, to live again. His voice roughened. This ranch isn't just land and buildings. It's proof that different people can work together. That family isn't just blood. That love and respect and common purpose can overcome hate. And if we abandon that because things got hard, then Kershaw wins. Even dead he wins. And I'll be damned if I let that happen. Silence filled the room. Then Ren stood. I'm staying. Tula rose next. Me too. One by one they stood, Mika, Sony, Rosa, Miguel, Isaiah. Until only Daniel and Naomi remained seated, holding their daughter between them. All right, Daniel finally said. We stay. But if things go bad, if it looks like Grace is in real danger, we reserve the right to take her and go. Fair? Fair, Flint agreed. The investigation dragged on for weeks. Marshal Garrett questioned everyone, examined evidence, interviewed half the territory. In the end, he concluded what everyone with sense already knew: Kershaw's death was suicide, pure and simple. The note blaming Cold Mesa Ranch was the bitter accusation of a broken man, nothing more. But the damage was done. The suspicion lingered. People who'd started warming to them went cold again. The support they'd built evaporated like morning dew. They were alone again, isolated, under siege without anyone firing a shot. September brought the first real test. A group of Kershaw's old friends, 5 men who'd been in his pocket and now found themselves adrift, decided to take matters into their own hands. They showed up at the ranch at dawn, drunk and angry and armed. Flint saw them coming and got everyone into defensive positions. Not hiding, just ready. They'd practiced this, knew what to do. The 5 men pulled up at the property line, shouting insults and threats, demanding justice for Kershaw, claiming Cold Mesa Ranch owed debts that needed paying. Leave, Flint called. Right now, before this gets ugly. It's already ugly, one of them yelled back. You killed Kershaw. He killed himself. And you're going to pay for it. Marshal Garrett investigated. Cleared us. You've got no grounds here. Don't need grounds, just need justice. That's not justice, that's revenge. And it's not happening on my land. Your land. The man laughed. You mean the land you stole by harboring criminals by defying decent society? That land. I mean the land we own, legally work honestly and defend absolutely. Now leave before someone gets hurt. One of the men raised his rifle. Isaiah's shot rang out before the man could fire, not hitting him, just kicking up dirt at his horse's feet. The horse reared, throwing its rider, and suddenly everything was chaos. The other 4 men fumbled for their weapons, but found themselves looking down the barrels of 6 rifles. Flint, Ayanna, Mika, Sonny, Miguel, and Isaiah, all with steady hands and steadier eyes. Next shot doesn't miss, Isaiah said calmly. Your call. The man on the ground scrambled back to his feet, backed toward his horse. This isn't over. Yes, it is, Ayanna said. Because if you come back, we'll defend ourselves, and at least 3 of you will die. Maybe all 5. Is revenge for a man who killed himself worth your life? The question hung there. The men looked at each other at the rifles pointed their way, at the cold certainty in the eyes of people who'd already survived worse than 5 drunk idiots with guns. They rode away. Nobody cheered. Nobody celebrated. They'd won without bloodshed, which was the best possible outcome, but it didn't feel like victory. It felt like a delay. Like the storm was still coming, and this was just the first drops of rain. They'll be back, Mika said. Maybe, Flint agreed. But not today. Today we won. That evening, as they gathered for dinner, baby Grace started crying. Naomi picked her up, tried to soothe her, but the crying intensified. Rosa came over, checked her temperature, her breathing, her color. She's sick, Rosa said. Fever. Bad one. Panic rippled through the room. Daniel grabbed his daughter, feeling her forehead, his face going white. We need a doctor. Closest doctor's in Cold Mesa, Ayanna said. 20 miles. Then we ride, now. In the dark, with men who might still be out there. I don't care, my daughter needs help. Flint made a decision. Isaiah, Miguel, saddle the horses. Fast ones. Daniel, Naomi, you ride with them to Cold Mesa. Get the doctor. We'll hold things here. I should go too, Ayanna said. No, I need you here in case those men come back. Flint turned to Daniel. Ride hard. Don't stop for anything. Get there. Get help, come back. We'll keep Grace safe here until you return with medicine. You'd do that? Keep her here instead of sending her with us. Faster travel if you're not carrying an infant. And Rosa knows medicine may be not doctor level, but enough to keep Grace stable until you get back. Daniel looked at his daughter, at his wife, at the impossible choice. Then he handed Grace to Rosa. Keep her alive, please. I will, I promise. Daniel and Naomi rode out with Isaiah and Miguel, disappearing into the darkness. The rest of them clustered around Rosa as she worked boiling water, mixing herbs, doing everything she could to bring Grace's fever down. Hours passed. The baby's crying weakened, which was somehow worse than when it was loud. Rosa never stopped moving, never stopped trying, but Flint could see the fear in her eyes. Is she going to make it? Wren whispered. I don't know, Rosa admitted. The fever's not breaking. If they don't get back soon with real medicine. She didn't finish, didn't need to. Tula started singing soft lullabies in Apache, then Spanish, then English. Songs about strength and survival, and children who defied death. Songs that were more prayer than music. Sonny paced like a caged animal. Mika kept watch at the window. Ayanna held Flint's hand so tight his fingers went numb, and Grace fought. Tiny fists clenched small chest, rising and falling, refusing to give up even as the fever burned through her. Dawn came gray and cold. Still no sign of the riders. Rosa's exhaustion was visible, her hands shaking, but she never stopped working. Then, finally, hoofbeats. All 4 riders crashed into the yard, a 5th man with them, Dr. Harrison from Cold Mesa, His medical bag clutched tight. He ran inside, assessed Grace in seconds, and started administering treatment. Medicine. Real medicine. The kind Rosa didn't have access to, couldn't make, couldn't substitute for. Grace's breathing steadied. Her fever started breaking. Color returned to her tiny face. By mid-morning, she was sleeping peacefully. The crisis passed. Daniel and Naomi collapsed beside her crib, holding each other, crying with relief. Dr. Harrison packed his bag, refused payment despite their insistence, and left with a warning to keep Grace warm and watch for any relapse. "You saved her life," Daniel told Rosa. "If you hadn't kept her stable, we saved her life," Rosa corrected. "All of us. That's what family does." There was that word again. Family. It kept coming back, kept defining them, kept making them more than just people living on the same land. That night, when everyone else had finally crashed from exhaustion, Flint and Ayanna found themselves on the porch again. "That was too close," Ayanna said. "It was. What if next time we're not lucky? What if next time someone dies? Then we grieve, and we keep going, because that's all we can do." Is it enough? Flint thought about that, really thought about it. About Grace fighting for her life. About 5 drunk men almost starting a war. About Kershaw's suicide, and the suspicion, and the isolation, and the endless struggle. "No," he said honestly. "It's not enough. But it's what we have. And sometimes what you have has to be enough, because the alternative is giving up. And I'm done giving up." Ayanna leaned against him. "Me too. God help me, me too." They sat until sunrise, watching their land, their home, their life emerge from darkness into light. Inside, baby Grace slept peacefully, surrounded by people who'd fight hell itself to keep her safe. And somewhere in that moment, Flint understood something fundamental. They hadn't just built a ranch. They'd built something bigger, a community, a family, a living, breathing rejection of everything the world said was impossible. People from different backgrounds, different histories, different bloodlines, all choosing each other. All choosing to stay. All choosing to believe that love and respect and common purpose could overcome anything. It was fragile, dangerous, under constant threat. But it was real, and it was worth everything they'd sacrificed to protect it. The sunrise brought something unexpected clarity. Flint stood on the porch watching light spill across the land they'd fought so hard to keep, and he realized they'd been thinking about survival all wrong. They'd been defending, reacting, waiting for the next attack. But defense alone never won anything. It just delayed losing. "We need to go on offense," he said when Ayanna joined him with coffee. "Offense how? March into town with guns blazing? No, offense by making ourselves undeniable. By becoming so established, so successful, so obviously legitimate, that even people who hate us can't pretend we don't belong." Ayanna considered that. "You're talking about expansion." "I'm talking about showing everyone we're not just surviving, we're thriving. We hire more people, we buy more land. We become an economic force the territory can't ignore. Make it cost too much to destroy us. That's ambitious. You have a better idea." "No." She smiled slightly. "But I like yours. Question is whether we have the resources to pull it off. We have something better than resources. We have 11 people who work harder than anyone I've ever met. We have crops coming in strong. We have cattle multiplying. We have skills and knowledge and determination." Flint turned to face her. "We have everything we need except courage to try. And I think we've proven we're not short on that." By the time everyone gathered for breakfast, Flint had the beginnings of a plan. He laid it out while they ate. Expand the herd. Hire seasonal workers for harvest. Buy the adjacent property that had been sitting empty since its owner died. Establish Cold Mesa Ranch as a legitimate business that employed people and contributed to the territorial economy. "That's going to take money we don't have," Mika pointed out. "We have some saved, and we can get a loan from the bank in Tucson." Whitmore said he knew people who'd be willing to invest in legitimate enterprises. We're Apache women and a mixed-race group living together, Sonny said. Banks don't usually see that as legitimate. Then we make them see it. We show them profit margins and projections and proof we're a good investment. We make it about money, not prejudice. Money doesn't stop prejudice, Naomi said quietly, Grace sleeping against her shoulder. It just makes people pretend harder. Maybe, but pretending is better than open hostility. At least pretending means they won't burn us out. Daniel spoke up. I think we should try. Worst case, they say no, and we're where we are now. Best case, we get the resources to become strong enough that they can't touch us without consequences. The decision was made. 3 days later, Flint, Ayanna, and Sonny rode to Tucson with carefully prepared documents, financial records, crop yields, livestock counts, projections for expansion. Everything neat and professional and designed to make Cold Mesa Ranch look like exactly what it was, a functioning, profitable operation. The banker was a man named Hutchinson, 50-something with cold eyes and colder hands. He listened to their pitch without expression, examined their documents without comment, and finally leaned back in his chair. You're asking for $5,000. Yes, sir. That's a substantial loan. It's a substantial opportunity. The adjacent property is 200 acres of prime grazing land. Combined with what we already have, we'd control nearly 500 acres, enough to run cattle operations that could supply beef to half the territory. And you think you can manage that? A group of... Hutchinson's pause was deliberate. Diverse individuals with no formal business training. We've managed to turn a dying ranch into a profitable operation in less than a year. Ayanna set her voice level. We've survived drought, winter storms, harassment, and constant hostility. We've built buildings, raised crops, and established ourselves as legitimate landowners with legal documentation. What exactly about that suggests we can't handle expansion? Hutchinson's expression didn't change. The bank has policies about lending to unconventional groups. Meaning Indians, Sonny said flatly. Meaning anyone whose ability to repay might be compromised by external factors beyond their control. Such as the possibility that territorial authorities might at some point determine your arrangement violates reservation policies or other regulations. Flint leaned forward. We have legal documents establishing us as partners. We have approval from territorial clerks. We have Marshal Garrett's verification that we're operating within the law. What more do you need? Mr. McAllen, I'm not questioning the legality of your current situation. I'm questioning the stability of it. Loans are based on risk assessment, and frankly, your operation presents significant risks the bank is uncomfortable assuming. So that's a no. That's a, we'll need to discuss it further with the board. But between us, I'd suggest looking elsewhere for financing. They left the bank with nothing but frustration and the bitter taste of polite rejection. I knew it, Sonny said as they walked back to their horses. Knew they'd find some way to say no without admitting it's because of who we are. There are other banks, Ayanna said, but her voice lacked conviction. And they'll all say the same thing. We're too risky, too different, too threatening to the established order. Sonny mounted her horse roughly. We should have known better than to ask for help from people who hate us. They tried 2 more banks, got the same answer in different words. By the time they returned to Cold Mesa Ranch, defeat sat heavy on all their shoulders. So what now? Miguel asked when they explained what happened. Now we do it ourselves, Flint said. We save every penny, we work harder, we build slower, but we build, and we prove we don't need their money or their approval. That could take years. Then it takes years. We're not going anywhere. But that night, alone with his doubts, Flint wondered if stubbornness was enough. Wondered if they were fooling themselves, thinking they could overcome centuries of hatred and fear through simple hard work. Ayanna found him sitting outside the barn, staring at nothing. Stop it, she said. Stop what? Stop doubting. I can see it on your face. You're wondering if we're fighting a losing battle. If any of this matters. Does it? Yes. Because every day we exist, every day we work together and build together and love each other despite everything the world says we shouldn't, that's a victory. That's proof that their way isn't the only way. That's hope for everyone watching who thinks they're trapped in systems they can't change. That's a lot of weight to put on one ranch. Good thing we're strong enough to carry it. Flint looked at the woman who'd knelt bruised in his barn less than a year ago, who'd grown from desperate refugee to powerful leader, who'd somehow found the strength to keep believing when belief should have been impossible. "How do you do it?" he asked. "How do you keep hoping when everything says you shouldn't?" Because the alternative is despair, and despair is just another way of letting them win. She sat beside him. "Besides, I have you. I have all of us. And as long as we're together, I can believe anything's possible. Even changing the world. Especially that." October brought unexpected salvation in the form of Catherine Walsh and 15 other town residents who arrived with a proposal. "We want to invest," Catherine said simply. Flint blinked. "What?" "In Cold Mesa Ranch. We've been talking, those of us who support what you're doing, and we want to help. Not out of charity, but as investors. We put up money, you expand, and we get a share of the profits. Everyone wins." "The banks turned us down." "We're not banks, we're neighbors. And we believe in what you're building here." Henderson stepped forward. "I've got $500 I can invest. Catherine has $300. Between all of us, we can raise the $5,000 you need, maybe more." Flint looked around at the faces: farmers, shopkeepers, a teacher, a blacksmith, a widow who ran a boarding house. Regular people with their own struggles, their own fears, choosing to risk their money on something that went against everything society told them was safe or smart. "Why?" Ayanna asked. "Why would you do this?" An older woman named Margaret spoke up. "Because I watched my son die in the war fighting for the idea that all people deserve freedom and dignity. And when he died, I promised myself I'd keep fighting for that idea in whatever way I could. This is my way." "Because my daughter's Cherokee," another man said. "And I want her to grow up in a world where that doesn't limit what she can become." "Because it's the right thing to do," Henderson said simply. "And sometimes that's reason enough." The investments came in over the next week. Small amounts, large amounts, whatever people could spare. By the end of October, Cold Mesa Ranch had $7,000 more than they'd asked for, more than they'd dared hope for. With that money, they bought the adjacent property, hired 6 seasonal workers for harvest, expanded the herd by 30 cattle, built a proper storehouse and a second bunkhouse, purchased equipment that made the work easier, faster, more efficient. By November, they were employing 18 people total. By December 23, the ranch that had been one dying man and 5 desperate women had become a legitimate operation that fed families, paid wages, and contributed to the territorial economy in measurable ways. And slowly, grudgingly, attitudes began to shift. Not everywhere, not everyone, but enough. Shopkeepers who'd been cold became neutral. Neutral ones became friendly. A few who'd been outright hostile found reasons to soften. Their cousin needed work, and Cold Mesa was hiring. Their daughter was sick, and Rosa had medicine that helped. Their barn burned, and Miguel organized a crew to help rebuild it. Small kindnesses that accumulated into something bigger. Connections. Relationships. The gradual erosion of walls built by fear and prejudice. One December evening, Marshall Garrett stopped by with news. Kershaw's friends dropped their complaints, all of them, said they're moving on, focusing on their own lives. Just like that? Sonny asked suspiciously. Not just like that, but Catherine Walsh organized a community meeting, laid out everything you've done for the area, jobs created, families supported, economic growth. Made it clear that continuing to harass you wasn't just wrong, it was stupid, self-defeating. Garrett smiled slightly. Sometimes economics wins where morality fails. So we're safe? Wren asked. Safer. There'll always be people who hate you for existing. That's just reality. But the majority, they're starting to see you as neighbors instead of threats. That's about the best you can hope for in this world. After he left, they gathered around the fire and just sat together. Grace was crawling now, exploring the world with fearless curiosity. The newest workers, 3 Mexican families and 2 white couples, were settling into the bunkhouses. The crops were stored, the cattle fed, the winter preparations complete. They'd survived another year. More than survived, they'd grown, thrived, become undeniable. "I want to say something," Daniel announced. "Something I've been thinking about for a while." Everyone turned to listen. "A year ago, Naomi and I were running out of options, out of hope. We'd been rejected everywhere, told we were wrong for loving each other, that Grace shouldn't exist. And then we found you. Found this place. And you took us in without hesitation." His voice cracked. "You saved our lives. But more than that, you showed us it's possible to build something different, something better. A place where love matters more than blood, where respect matters more than skin color, where family is what you choose, not what you're born into." He picked up Grace, held her close. "And I want my daughter to grow up knowing she was raised by a whole community of people who prove the world wrong. That's what you've given us. That's what this place means." "It's what you've given us too," Ayanna said. "Every person here, you all saved my life just as much as I saved yours. We saved each other. That's how this works." Tula started singing, then one of her Apache songs that none of them fully understood, but all of them felt. Ren joined in, then Rosa with harmonies, then everyone humming or singing in their own languages, creating something new from old traditions. Flint listened and felt tears on his face. He didn't bother wiping them away. Ayanna took his hand. "You did it. What you wanted when we first met, you brought this land back to life. We did it, all of us. No, you started it. That morning when you opened the barn and didn't shoot, when you gave us food instead of orders, when you chose mercy over fear. That's what made everything else possible. I just did what felt right. That's the point. You did what felt right when everything said you should do what was safe. That's called courage. That's called love. And that's why we're all here." Spring came again, bringing with it the kind of renewal that never got old, no matter how many times you witnessed it. The land-greened flowers bloomed, and Cold Mesa Ranch buzzed with life and purpose. They held a celebration in March, 1 year since the partnership papers had been signed. Catherine Walsh came with 30 townspeople. Henderson brought his whole family. Even Marshall Garrett showed up off-duty and smiling. There was food, music, laughter. Grace took her first steps at that party, wobbling between her parents while everyone cheered. Miguel and Rosa performed a traditional dance. Isaiah told war stories that had everyone alternately horrified and amazed. Mika entered a horseshoe tournament and won, much to everyone's delight. And Flint and Ayanna danced slow and slightly awkward, because neither was particularly graceful, but happy in ways that transcended technique. "Marry me," Flint said suddenly. Ayanna missed a step. "What? Marry me. Make it official. I know we're already partners, legally already together in every way that matters. But I want—" He struggled for words. "I want the world to know you're mine and I'm yours, and that we chose this. Chose each other. Chose this life." "Flint McAllen, are you proposing to me in the middle of a dance?" "Yes. Is that wrong?" "It's perfect." She kissed him, not caring who saw. "Yes. Absolutely yes." They married in April, with everyone they cared about, watching, their ranch family, their town allies, even James Whitmore, who rode up from Tucson to serve as witness. No fancy ceremony, no elaborate decorations, just 2 people making promises in front of the people who mattered most. Ayanna wore a dress Tula had made simple and beautiful. Flint wore his one good suit that had seen better days, but still fit well enough. Ren cried through the whole ceremony. So did Rosa. So did Isaiah, though he'd deny it later. Do you, Flint McAllen, take this woman to be your partner in all things, to honor her strength, to support her dreams, to stand beside her in all struggles to come? I do. Always have. Always will. And do you, Ayanna, take this man to be your partner in all things, to honor his courage, to support his vision, to stand beside him in all struggles to come? I do. From the first moment he chose mercy over fear. Then by the authority vested in me by the territory of Arizona and the bonds of love and respect that unite this community, I pronounce you husband and wife. They kissed while everyone cheered, and Flint thought about that morning almost 18 months ago, when he'd opened the barn door expecting nothing and finding everything. 5 women kneeling in the straw. One choice to help instead of harm. And from that single moment of mercy, all of this family community, love, purpose, life worth living. What are you thinking? Ayanna asked later as they stood together watching the celebration continue without them. That I was dead, and you brought me back to life, all of you. We brought each other back. That's how resurrection works. It's not one person saving another, it's everyone choosing to save each other until nobody's drowning anymore. Poetic. True. Wren approached with Grace in her arms, the baby babbling happily. Can I say something? Always, Flint said. I was thinking about that day in the barn, when you found us, and I realized we weren't the only ones who needed saving that morning. You did too. You were dying just as much as we were, just in a different way. So really, this whole thing, everything we built, it's not about some white man saving Apache women. It's about broken people finding each other and deciding to be whole together. When did you get so wise? Ayanna asked. I learned from the best. Wren handed Grace to her. All of you taught me that family isn't about blood or tribe or any of that. It's about who shows up, who stays, who chooses you every single day, even when it's hard, even when it's dangerous, even when the whole world says it's wrong. She hugged them both quick and fierce, then ran off to join the dancing. Flint watched her go, this girl who'd arrived silent and terrified and had become a young woman full of strength and hope and understanding. We did good, he said. We did. Ayanna agreed. But we're not done. There's still so much to build, so much to protect, so much to prove. I know. You ready for it? Flint looked around at Cold Mesa Ranch, at the buildings they'd raised, the fences, they'd mended, the crops they'd planted, the lives they'd built together. At Mika, laughing with Henderson's wife. At Sonny teaching Miguel's nephew to ride. At Tula and Rosa cooking together, sharing recipes and stories. At Isaiah holding Grace while Daniel and Naomi danced. At 23 people from different worlds, different histories, different futures, all choosing to be here, choosing to work together, choosing to prove that another way was possible. Yeah, he said, I'm ready. Because this was what mattered. Not the struggles or the victories or the money or the land. This people loving each other across every boundary society erected to keep them apart. People building something real and lasting and true. People refusing to let hate win. That was worth everything they'd sacrificed. That was worth everything they'd become. And as the sun set over Cold Mesa Ranch, painting the sky in colors that had no names, Flint McAllen stood with his wife's hand in his and understood something fundamental about grace. It wasn't something you earned or deserved. It was something you gave freely, expecting nothing, hoping everything. And sometimes, if you were lucky enough and brave enough and foolish enough to believe in impossible things, grace came back to you, multiplied beyond measure. 5 women kneeling in a barn at dawn. 1 man choosing mercy over fear. And from that single act of grace, a whole world rebuilt. Not perfect, never that, but real, and chosen, and loved. And in the end, that was more than enough. That was everything.